All right, I think we're good to kick things off. Hey, everybody, this is Craig Baldwin from Losant. I'm the VP of Sales and Partnerships. I'm going to be on today's webinar where we talk about sharing how to accelerate an IoT implementation for market success with BH IoT. On today's webinar, I want to introduce the moderator and co-host, or in this case, I guess, panelist, Charlie Key, the CEO of Losant, Adam Daniel, VP of Enterprise Solutions, and Steve, you're our moderator. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself and sort of kick things off a little bit?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me today. Hello, everybody. This is Steve Brumer. I'm a partner with a company called BH IoT Group, and you guys have probably seen me before, but I'm glad to be a part of this group. And Charlie, thank you and the team for inviting me to help moderate this executive briefing. What we're finding in our post-COVID war world that we've been involved, and I say war, it's been a war of attrition for the last 18 months, is that we went through this couple of months of having long webinars, an hour, and everybody had the time to do it. And now we're getting to the point of where we want to do these executive briefings. And this is the first of hopefully a long series of ones that we're going to be doing together with the Losant team, where we try and quickly go through some really great highlights and really great pieces of information about what Losant's doing. And today's topic, as you know, is around Losant shares how to accelerate an IoT implementation for market success. And one of the challenges that we're seeing today, not only from the analysts that are out there, but what we're seeing in real time is that a lot of the IoT POCs and trials that are being done by everybody are not necessarily looking at it from what can we deploy. And so when we look at deploying, that's a big part of where we go from now is we got to be able to move these things from POCs to full-blown implementation and deployments if we're going to meet the numbers. The numbers continue to increase dramatically. It's wider and broader than ever before in the industry. But getting these things implemented, which will show market success, is really critical to what we're trying to accomplish. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm very happy to introduce Charlie Key, who's the CEO of Losant, who will kick off a little understanding around what Losant is doing from a business standpoint, talk a little bit about the people side of the business, the objectives, and Charlie, what I'm hearing out on the marketplace is that we're not setting the proper expectations in trials and POCs, and which is one of the issues that are coming into play. So Charlie, the floor is yours. Give us a little idea what's going on.
Steve, thanks for having me today. I appreciate it. And you're absolutely right. I think expectations are not getting set across both executive team and leadership team. Just to reintroduce myself a little bit, Charlie Key, I'm CEO and co-founder at Losant. I work with Adam and Craig every day and our customers in trying to understand how they're going to market in the IoT space. Losant is an IoT platform for enterprises to build and go to market with new IoT products and services through our suite of software tools and components that allow people to get their applications and solutions into market as fast as possible. So as Steve mentioned, expectations is extremely important when we look at the IoT market. And it starts with leadership, and it starts from the top down in the companies that we've seen do it well and have success. It's been a very interesting challenge as we look at companies try to understand what they're trying to deliver in the market and how they're trying to get those into market. As we see it, a lot of times we're seeing, now boards of companies from a top-down initiative to say that we cannot and we must not have any issues in getting these IoT platforms and products out into the market. And so as those come from the top down, what we really see is to get those keys of success, it's building new teams inside of these organizations that have an understanding of what is required from both the people, a process, and really on the technology and the product side to get these get these products and new services into market. And what I mean by that is, we've seen teams that have success. Really, what they do is they bring in new leadership or promote within new leadership to really focus on these areas and really drive it as a new product initiative inside of the company. And so, you really have to have that teamwork to do that. And so that's the biggest thing that I see day in and day out is both setting the expectations really from the board level down all the way, understanding what that timeline is going to be to get things in the market and really driving that from people who have the capabilities to do it.
So Charlie, question, one of the things that came out of the Microsoft's 2020 IoT Signals report is that 28% of the organizations polled cited budget as a barrier to further IoT adoption. Agree, disagree? I mean, it's only 28%. So are we successful with the other 72?
I'd agree. I kind of would have expected to be maybe even a little bit higher. I mean, what we see is if we don't start with the business case from both a cost and potentially revenue generation of these projects, I mean, it's a challenge to get these things off the ground. And I think that companies underestimate the cost to get a true production solution into the market and get it stood up and running. The payback times are typically fast in what we see, but again, it comes back to understanding what those budget expectations are as we kind of kick it off. And I think sometimes people get a sticker shock in how they look at that.
Are they pushing back from an Opex Capex discussion? Is ROI still critical?
Yeah, I think both come up. The CapEx and the Opex conversation happens, especially in specific industries, right? Companies and industries that have been focused, especially in the industrial, space. The CapEx conversation happens a lot. From OEM equipment manufacturers to manufacturing facilities. That's a big component of it. The other piece is that ROI, what is going to be that ROI and kind of handing that calculation and that understanding, building that up from the ground up and being able to adjust it on the fly and understand that obviously we're going to have some changes. Yeah.
Audience members, just so you know, you can go to the Q&A button on the bottom and send us questions. We'll be taking a lot of your questions during and after the last 10 minutes of this panel. I want to pass it off to Adam Daniel. Adam is the VP of Solutions at Losant. And Adam, please talk to us a little bit about the foundation of the solution, how to set up projects for success, both from a deployment standpoint and also around the POC standpoint. So really give us some guidance on how you do this best.
Sure. Yep. Thanks, Steve. Really it starts with that thought around architecture, right? And to probably oversimplify an IoT solution a little bit, I think about five major categories that people need to think about. The first one is data collection. Second is connectivity. Third is platform. Fourth is integrations. And then finally, we have an experience. And talk about each one of those individually here for a second. Data collection is really, what data do you need? What data do you have? This is obviously the first thing that you've got to figure out, right? So what am I trying to collect? What are my means of collection? That could be something simple. If you have a PLC or a controller hooked up to a piece of equipment and you just already have data that you need, maybe in the cloud, then that might be simple. Maybe more complex if you're trying to do something that's more environmental. So how do you collect things like air quality? This often involves hardware and can be a huge sticky point up front as you're trying to investigate hardware, sensors, all of that. And then the next phase is kind of connectivity. And connectivity may imply things like cellular or LoRa or something like that, like a wireless connectivity. But really it's, how do I get data from the source to a platform? Often this is direct, something like cell. We're seeing cell still a lot in the marketplace. We're seeing a lot more of the long-range wireless like LoRa, Sigfox pop up. Also seeing still a lot of the local protocols, Thread, Bluetooth, which require an intermediate step often to get it going from the actual source through a gateway, then up to the cloud. So some considerations there when you're talking about connectivity. From a platform standpoint, obviously we are a platform, so this is where we spend our time. We're still surprised too by how often we have to compete against homegrown solutions. A lot of people want to take the entire concept of a platform and think they can just grow it themselves and hopefully it's okay. And spending the last 5-6 years working on a platform, we can tell you that it's not so simple. There's a lot of things that you have to think about. Message brokers, how are you going to store the data, time series database, visualization, stream processing, not to mention things like scalability, security, and all of that. So really take a hard look at the platform itself. Those are the bare minimums that you need in a platform. And we see a lot of people try to grow their own and then fail when they get things to scalability and security specifically. And then after the platform, it's around integrations. And integrations, I mean, what do I need to do with this data? Do I need to send it somewhere else, like create work orders? Do I need to integrate with other external services, maybe ERP, CRM services like that? Do I need to worry about sending information to other devices to close the loop on taking some of the action? And then finally, the fifth piece that I think is often overlooked, and I think this is where a lot of solutions often fail too, is it's kind of that what now phase. It's, okay, now we have data. What are we going to do with it? And that's where the experience comes in. And by experience, it could be an actual end user experience where there's an application. It could be more around what do I do with the data from a machine learning, or what do I do with the data from an ongoing processing standpoint. So those are the 5 areas that we think about when we're talking about a full IoT architecture. I think there are complex things in each one of those 5 pieces that cause people to drop out. I think the most complicated at the beginning is the hardware. How do I actually collect the data? Then it probably gets into the platform, and then ultimately what now in the experience.
So what do you think is the biggest challenge, Adam, that you're seeing out there for people to go from POC to deployment and make this a successful mission to get your IoT data going?
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at these 5 things, there are ways to start simple. And sometimes it's people try to bite off more than they can chew.
That's our inherent nature. That's what we do, Adam.
Exactly. Yep, absolutely. And I think if you start just Googling IoT platform and IoT solution, you're going to get bogged down with a lot of information. We actually have a POC process that within 1 to 2 weeks, we could potentially have data going through the first 3 phases of the architecture within a couple weeks, because we've started at the platform and then we've actually expanded out to the other areas around data collection and integrations. So specifically with Losant, we've tried to make it as easy as possible to start from nothing and then prove out a concept as quickly as possible with very little budget. And then in the same platform, scale up to a production level solution.
Do you think that there's pushback from some prospects and customers in here because it's just too complicated?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I look at that first part, the data collection, and I'm a software guy. So hardware to me is hard. You talk to a hardware guy and software to them is hard. So, that's why a good partner ecosystem is important. That's why relying on expertise is important. I think if you try to do it all yourself, then you're going to get overwhelmed very, very quickly. So starting simple, leveraging expertise that already exists will help you get past that proof of concept.
Excellent. Craig, on to you. Why don't you introduce yourself and some of the things that you're interested in as VP of Sales and Partnerships. Looking at it from an ecosystem, there's a lot of people involved in these things. So give us a little insight from Craig on partnerships and how do you don't go it alone and don't, we use all these sayings, don't boil the ocean, all those kind of things. So why don't you give you a little idea about your strategic partnerships and how you see that as being a part of your success?
Yeah, thanks, Steve, and hello, everybody. I could probably reiterate all the things that were said previous to me, but that sort of lays the foundation why the large scale IoT solutions that we see in the market today are almost always serviced by multiple vendors. So you could use Losant as an example, or one of the large cloud service providers. You could also use one of the large connectivity companies, whether that's a Verizon or AT&T or even something different, and then hardware. And so what you find is not only is it challenging as a customer to see through all that and understand it and project manage it and negotiate it, but it just adds a lot more risk to the overall implementation and the program that you're trying to create. And so what we've tried to do, and I think many IoT companies have tried to do the same, and I think most do a decent job, is find as many partners who we trust and can integrate with our technology. We know the integration is solid, whether that's from a sensor perspective or gateway perspective or networking perspective, and really reduce the headache around getting that full end-to-end solution, being device, connectivity, and software to the market. There's just no doubt that the amount of complexity in any one of those three can be great, depending on where you're at in the process and the skill sets and resources you have available. But when you combine all three, it's unlike other industries that are out there, especially, as Adam said, from a software perspective. And so at the end of the day, our mission as a company and what we try to do with our partners is to reduce the complexity to the best of our ability and really lower the barrier to entry to market for organizations that maybe on the enterprise side, but also in small to medium sized business size.
Craig, where are these partners coming from? I mean, obviously there are some companies out there that have started with IoT from the beginning, but what's the experience level and the background of a lot of these partners, and who are you looking for?
Yeah, it's another great question. I hate to say it, it's kind of all over the place. From a device perspective, we've had great success with the largest manufacturers, as well as a couple guys in the garage who have been doing their own hardware and firmware for 10 to 15 years. And sometimes, we've actually found that those groups can be some of the best to work with because they're highly specialized. They have a ton of experience, and they really usually know their niche offering. They're dedicated to one or two or three different device types that can really bring about a compelling solution. And then on the connectivity side, there are just many different options that are available. And so what we try to do is sort of have the best in breed in our partner ecosystem, whether you decide to go with cellular or LoRa or something in between. But it's all over the map. I think at the end of the day, it's a very large mix of practitioners and experts who are just really focused on bringing IoT to market in a way that really shows business value. I think that's the most critical piece that often gets lost in this mix is let's not be necessarily technology led, but let's be business problem solution led, and let's let the technology solve those problems for us, as opposed to looking for problems to solve. That's usually where we get in trouble. So we really try to focus on the problem solution side of things.
Craig, I'm a big partner guy. I've been working on the channels forever. And one of the questions that always comes up to us is, how do you make money doing this? And we at BH IoT Group have done so many different webinars and seminars and talks around how to make money, including one tomorrow that I have in Phoenix. How do you go through that discussion with them? I mean, are you going through the idea of saying you can make money on the hardware and the software and the clouds and the platform and the applications and all the other pieces? Do you go through that kind of consultative selling process with them?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, just given the nature of the complexity in this industry, I think every sale is a consultative sale, like it or not. It's there are a couple different ways to go about it. What we call typically customers are organizations who are usually bundling all three of those things: the application, the connectivity, and the device, if you will, and taking that to market. And so we're hoping that by doing that, obviously they're taking a lot of risk, and we're hoping that they can capture the most value as part of the overall solution. But then when I look at more of what we would consider a VAR network, it's really about making sure that we can offer the same sort of traditional incentives, whether that's discounts or reseller fees, whatever we provide to them, commissions on the software. But what it's really about at the end of the day is pushing net new projects to these organizations. That's what every partner is hungry for. They all want that SOW or that service contract. And that's what we're trying to help them do and provide them an easier way to get into that and to doing it at scale. From a hardware and connectivity perspective, it's more of a volume game. It's much more about, hey, help me sell, as you know, thousands of devices, or help me connect thousands of devices, and that's there. And I think for organizations who are progressive and willing to put their necks on the line, they can actually use our technology to put apps in the market that will enable more connectivity for them or enable the sale of more hardware. I think that's probably the best way to do it. But it can be complicated. I'll just say that there are many different ways to attack this market as a partner, and it really just depends on your own capabilities and your risk profile.
Got it. Hey, Adam, one of the things that statistic we got from Omdia is that enterprises in the process of deploying IoT platforms are overwhelmingly committed to these projects. More than 90% saying IoT is a core or broad part of their digital transformation strategy. How much discussions do you have with groups around the platform, but the offset of that platform, of your platform? What's the success model? Once you've committed to doing using the platform, here's what the ultimate goal is going to be, and here's what the ultimate benefit is going to be to your company as an enterprise.
Yeah, so from a solution standpoint, professional services, we kind of we're often an augment to the customer when it comes to that. So we'll often work within pre-sales to work out what the solution ultimately looks like, what the license looks like from a platform standpoint, and then kind of augment their business a little bit. So we try to work as closely with them as possible to figure out what that final solution is, and guide them through the technology, guide them through the IoT aspect of it, and let them focus just on that business. So whether that's enhancing a support model because you've got additional data on devices in the field, or whether that's actually offering a solution to a consumer, being able to kind of be part of that and consult all along the way is huge.
And Charlie, one of the questions I have for you is what we speak about all the time from a BH IoT strategy advisory standpoint is, don't boil the ocean. Don't go crazy trying to do everything for everybody and providing everybody with anything and everything. It confuses your client, it confuses the customer, but more importantly, it extends your sales cycle and extends your deployment cycle. And if we're going to be showing success models, I think we have to try and figure out how to reduce the time to market, the time to deployment, the time to realization. What suggestions do you have for everybody in the audience?
Yeah, that's a great comment and a question, really. I mean, we're big fans of that exact kind of sentiment from a strategy standpoint, right? Like, as we look at it, the way I tend to think about approaching it is let's identify obviously that first problem,
Right.
And that first use case, let's build the business case around that. So what is our inputs and our outputs from a cost standpoint? Obviously, as we keep that scope, closer to minimal, we're reducing that long-term cost. And again, thinking about that go-to-market time. I think the next part is, piggybacking on what Adam and Craig have said is a key component of that strategy to keep the scope small and get the market in a fast manner is both from a technology architecture standpoint, is making sure you have the right people internally and the right partners to keep that architecture and the technology stack as minimal as possible in order to deliver something into the market. And so, approaching it from those different angles as we look at this use case and this problem from day one is going to allow us to get to market faster. And I can't emphasize enough choosing those right partners and the right third-party people that you're working with, both from a connectivity, hardware, platform, software standpoint. That tends to be one of the biggest that we find as both an advantage and a disadvantage. I mean, we've seen companies do very well by choosing the right partners and getting in the market in a relatively fast time at a use case scope that makes sense. But we've also seen companies on the other side of that coin where they spend 2 years with the wrong partners, they don't get something in the market, and they're back at square one. And so I think when we talk about budget, that's a big component of looking at that long-term budget is choosing those right partners.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, the budget for a POC is a little bit different than a deployment budget, and sometimes we have to figure it out. And we're seeing a lot more of this. That's why I was asking the original question about Opex versus Capex to you guys, because we're seeing a lot of this Opex model as a service model being, a huge play in the industry right now. But the money is the money, and someone's paying for that, along the line. So we like to bring that up. So, hey, Craig, another question around the partnership program. We're looking at the education factor. A lot of times we're doing a halfway decent job of educating. We look at systems integration needs and the style of being able for a partner to be able to do those kinds of things. When people come to Losant to become a partner, tell us a little bit about your program. Like, what's the training? What's the education? How important is that? How much time are you spending on that? How long does it take a partner to get its act together to be able to start making money partnering with Losant?
Yeah, the education is critical. And look, we will not take on a partner if they do not have speciality or some type of subject matter expertise. I think one of the big things that's overlooked in IoT, at least from my perspective, is you need the technology and the know-how to put the technology together, but there's always like the application of that technology via the subject matter expert. Maybe that's an operational person, maybe that's a plant manager. It's somebody who knows how to get the most out of that solution. And so those are really the types of partners we're looking for, the ones who have deep expertise for a certain problem set, and they're looking to combine that with this new age technology or new business models. And so we think that we can help a lot of the organizations who want to go through that digital transformation from a partner perspective. And so when they come into our ecosystem, we do some quality checks up front. We then put them through Losant University, where they are having their developers get comfortable with the platform, learning about it through our video-based content, working in it just about every day. We also have them actually build out sample applications just to get a gut check for how good or not good they may be at some of these early activities. But what we've found is enforcing those types of things really helps people understand how to work with Losant, because our framework, what we offer is not necessarily traditional programming. it's a little bit different environment, especially because we're sort of in this low code type atmosphere. And so there's a little bit of a mindset shift that has to occur. So if we can force them to get in and be active, they can have that mindset shift. They usually get to that point where they really kind of, well, to be honest, they fall in love with the platform. And then it's about how can we help them commercially be successful. And so that's really about putting joint go-to-market plans together. That's about putting prospect lists together. That's about understanding, pricing and what are they focused on, and making sure that if we have opportunities that come in the door where we need their help, we can match them appropriately and vice versa. So there's a lot of hand holding, as you would expect. But I would say at this point in the game, we're much more focused on quality and a lot less focused on quantity. And I don't think that's always the case for other platforms or other software vendors, because I think a lot of people are just trying to get as many implementations
as much as they can. Yeah,
yeah,
it makes sense.
But that could be dangerous. Charlie talked about how there's a lot of projects that have been down the path for 1 to 2 to 3 years and have nothing to show for it, right? And so I think IoT itself is obviously a big topic, but it's a very specialized craft. You really need people to come together from a business, probably process and technology background to bring it all together and be really successful. And that's a little bit different than other sort of software implementation you might see in other areas.
Excellent. Audience, the participants, if you have any questions, please go down to that Q&A button down on the bottom of the screen. We have about 7 to 10 minutes left. So if you have any questions for these guys, please put them in there. But I have more on. That's why I get paid the little bucks to do these things. Adam, are you finding that today's the companies coming to Losant today versus several years ago have their act together? Are they better at this than they were 3 to 5 years ago, when it was a lot of effort for getting people to understand what a platform was, let alone what to do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a more educated marketplace out there right now, or market out there right now. And I think it's because of what Craig just mentioned and what Charlie just mentioned, because some of them have been trying to do something for the last 2 to 3 years, and are struggling still with it. And I think it's a focus also from a hiring standpoint. We've seen people specifically hired into roles, and I think Charlie kind of mentioned that at the beginning. It's not just a hey Bob, here, go try this kind of thing. It's actually strategy up front, and they're trying to hire the right people to drive their business towards an IoT solution and success in IoT. So definitely, there's much more education now. The proof of concepts is still super important because there's a lot more education, but still people need that proof. A lot of things are still theory when it comes to IoT and how it gets applied to certain businesses. So proving it out is still super important.
Excellent. Charlie, last year at the IoT Evolution event expo down in Fort Lauderdale, you guys were presented with the Product of the Year award, and we're all headed down next week to our first face-to-face IoT show in a long, long time. And like to see people down there, but we'll be down there also. But when we look at the last year or so of COVID and looking at our businesses around IoT, you got Product of the Year. Did the last year give you the time to kind of rebuild your business and rebuild the IoT focus and look at things a little differently? I mean, I'm looking at Product of the Year award. That's great in 2020, but now what do we do in 2021? So I just wanted to ask you that question, since the show is coming up next week in Miami Beach.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking forward to seeing shows in general come back, not just this one, but all over the world. And but yeah, that's a great comment. We continually have to evolve both our product and our business and our focus. made a lot of strides over the last year in a couple very specific areas. I mean, we talked a lot about trying to get people to market as fast as possible. That's our goal, both as a company, from a people process. Our product is really focused on that. And so we've done a lot on what we call templates. Templates are that starter for companies to try to get, a new product up and running, whether it's equipment monitoring, asset tracking. We've worked with our partners. This is a big initiative that we've done with partners to try to get, work with our partners to get more templates around what they're doing and around the hardware that they are implementing in the market. I think one of the biggest things that we're seeing, both from a market perspective at a macro level, but also in how we're focusing our product is companies who not only want to build, what we think of as a multi-tenant product. Everybody wants to have that SaaS product, like you said, and so they want to put as many people on that as possible. So we've done a lot of work to continue to evolve into that space, from a user management, from a data management, from a permissioning, and so that's a lot of the area for us, and how we focus. And obviously COVID has changed how we've all worked, as we all sit here on Zoom all over the world, and it's going to change the offices as we come back to it. And IoT, I think, is going to be a big part of that.
Absolutely. Got a question from the audience, and Adam, I'm going to direct it to you. Are customers willing to pay for POCs?
Yeah, actually they are. And I think it's also has to do with how we structure our POCs. We try to keep them simple. We time box them purposefully. We make sure that it's not just this big open-ended thing, which a lot of POCs can turn into. So we do get paid for POCs. We keep it very, very structured, very small. We try to focus specifically on what that proof is, and push it through as quickly as possible. Because the major discussion is time to market. If we can make that proof, we can remove that barrier, or an initial barrier at least, to markets. We want to do that as quickly as possible. Excellent.
And that was a setup question from our friend Rob Tiffany. So I'm so glad for him and all the other people that are participating in this executive briefing. Okay, as we wrap up, one of the things that, all of us have been in the industry a long time, some of us a little longer than others. So I wanted to ask, with the changes that have occurred to our world, with all the craziness that's going around IoT, and Charlie, you brought it up, IoT for getting back in offices and smart buildings, and where we are with autonomous vehicles and so many of the other more efficient productivity gains coming from IoT. I want all three of you to put on your prediction hat. Give me one thing that you see, like a year from now when we're back here talking again. What do you see as a significant change that's coming in the IoT space that you want the audience to know about? Adam, I'm going to start with you again, since from a technical standpoint.
Biggest change.
Or prediction.
Prediction. Infrastructure is a big thing. Connectivity is still something that's a challenge. How do you get that data, obviously, from the source to the platform? Obviously, things like 5G is all over the place as ever. But I think things like LoRa and maybe some interesting odd things like helium, and what they're doing with crypto and everything. I think that's interesting. So I think there's going to be some interesting things and even some things like what Verizon's trying to do with MEC, the mobile edge compute, moving some of that stuff down. I think it's probably going to be the biggest thing moving forward is trying to simplify or around the connectivity.
Excellent. Craig?
I think much of what I've seen just in the last 6 months is all around a push for remote monitoring, and then hopefully at some point remote control in a way that people were interested in before but didn't have the appetite for. I think it's here now, whether that has to do with monitoring equipment or monitoring spaces, environments, people, systems. We've had many more conversations around sort of the smart building space and the smart campus space than we ever did before. And I think what that's going to do is drive people in facilities and IT to really put strategies on the table and put initiatives, make initiatives, as I should say, corporate wide. And that means they have to have policies on IoT devices. They can't just say, don't bring that here anymore. You know, we've been getting fought off by IT for years, but I think now the wave is too strong. I think it's going to really open up the capability for business leaders and operational leaders. If their corporation does have IoT standards in place and tells them what technology they can use, now there's a whole bevy of use cases that they probably wanted to work on for years, but they never had corporate support. And now suddenly, if those standards are in place, they can go out and do that. We've actually heard a really cool one recently from an organization in sort of the entertainment space that was going to put in place a corporate-wide policy for IoT, and they had people that they own a zoo. They had people in the zoo saying, you know, why did this take so long? We've been wanting to monitor temperature and humidity in cages for years, and we haven't been able to do it at a large scale. And it's like, you know, I never would have thought about that, but of course it's an obvious use case. And so I think at a corporate level, I'm expecting organizations to really have an IoT strategy in place, IT to say, here are the best practices and here are our standards. And then hopefully that opened the floodgates to organizations really going after and executing on some of these strategies that have been sort of consulting reports for a long time, but we haven't seen out in the wild as much.
I agree. And Charlie, I'm going to give you the last word, since you and I have had enough conversations about the pondering of future ideas in this crazy space that we're in. What do you think?
You know, I'm gonna keep it simple. I think you know, looking
no
up
way.
on top of.
Don't start now. Don't start now.
You know, piggybacking on what Adam and Craig said is, you know, I think if we look a year from now. You know, I think 75 to 80% of the Fortune 500 will have people with IoT in their title. I think that is a thing that we'll see a year from now, and you're going to see a rapid development of those organizations inside of these companies. You know, and they can be focused on many different areas. Like Craig mentioned, I think we're going to see a lot more workplace environments and outdoor environments fall into that. I think we're going to see a lot more remote monitoring from an industrial standpoint. And so, you know, I think you can look a year from now and you're going to see a massive increase in the number of people on LinkedIn with IoT, you know, next to their name. And these
that actually know what they're talking about, even though it's just not listed on it.
Oh, we'll call that 50%.
As long as they have a budget, Steve.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, and I'm going to throw my 2 cents in there. I think that as we go forward, we're showing a lot about use cases and case studies and, you know, actual people that have deployed stuff and looking at the ROI that they went through and the deployment and POC deployment phases they went through. I think a year from now, we will continue to have a more mature industry that allows people to come to Losant to get going faster, quicker, more cost effective, with the support that they need in order to deploy successfully in the marketplace. I think I don't think we're going to get, and I know I'm going to get into trouble with many of the people that are on here. I'm not sure we're getting to the IoT in a box place yet, but we are getting to the point of where we can get solutions in a box, meaning that I know all the pieces of the solution that are required to be successfully deploying it. And so if I come to Losant, can I get all those things? Yes. And here's why we're good at it. And here's what our experience has been. So I think a year from now, we're going to see that coming to fruition, because that's where the industry is driving. And I also think, and Charlie, you and I, all of us have talked several times about the SMB markets. I know we love the enterprise because of the volumes that are there, but man, the SMB markets are coming. Guys that are putting in 25, 100, 200 sensors or device monitoring or asset tracking stuff. And those guys are needing help because it's not cookie cutter even for them. So I do think that we're getting to that point where we get around to it. So in conclusion, go to, you put up the last slide, Craig. So fill out the form, come to the Losant site, join us for, get more information from this team, call them. I know all these guys, they all want to talk to everybody. We all have a gift of gab. So we all want to be able to talk to you about your solutions and what you're trying to accomplish, because we are all committed to this industry. We're all committed to consultative selling, meaning we all have to spend the time educating and consulting with you to do that. And, reach out to them, reach out to us. I'll be down at IoT Evolution with John and the group, the BH IoT Group. Make some time to come down, make some time to meet us, give us a buzz, send me an email. We'll get on the schedule to do that, because I think that, going to events as vendors and as participants and as end users, you can learn so much more being face to face. And Florida is open. As a Florida resident, I can tell you it's open, so don't worry about that. But thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We wanted to make this a little different. Losant is really, really good. Janet and the team in marketing have done a great job of continuing these webinars with you from a technical training and a training scenario. We wanted to just have a little briefing, and talk openly about a lot of different subjects, and hopefully we have accomplished that and everybody's had a great time here. This is being recorded. You'll have a chance to get this out after this is over, but stay in touch with us. Hopefully we'll have a couple more of these where we just kind of, talk around and talk about different subjects. So thanks everybody for joining. Thanks for the Losant team for having me as the moderator. See you in Miami next week. Reach out to us. Have a great day. Thanks again. Bye-bye, everybody.